I'm going to share with you guys some experiences of my parents and compare those to the readings for this week, and some thoughts and suggestions for my parents as well. So here are some background information. My parents own a company that focuses on computer hardware manufacture and software design in Taiwan. And also in Taiwan, we haven't been required to work remotely by government because the pandemic is somehow under control, which is good. But it also means that we don't have, most of the companies do not have the experience of remote working. And however, my parents did have some opportunities to work with remote workers. And that's how they feel. They don't like it. And the main reason is that my parents couldn't find the workers either through email or phone calls, and even when it is in working hours. So it seems that those workers just disappeared. And also, there seems to be a later email reply than usual and lower communication frequency. So in general, they found it less productive. And how about the research, the readings that Dr. Fuller just mentioned? So according to our readings for this week, it seems like working from home increased the performance and improved the work satisfaction and working hours. All software innovation works. There's no significant difference between group communication, either through video conferences or face-to-face communication. So even though there are some downsides of working from home, it seems that research has positive attitudes for remote work. And that made me feel confused because it seems that there's a huge difference between my parents' experience and the research. So I wonder why. Here are some possible reasons. First is the organizational culture. My parents' company really value face-to-face communication and direct interaction. And second, types of work. So there might be some types of work or text that is less suitable for remote working. For example, in my parents' company, the financial accountants is less suitable because there are some documents and data that couldn't and not allowed to take outside the company. So, and the third reason is lack of experiences. Like I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, in Taiwan, most of the companies do not have the experiences of remote working. So it seems like there are a lot of room for improvement. And after I had the conversation with my parents, they asked for my suggestion. Should they keep trying to allow the employees to work remotely, or should they just abandon this kind of working style? Here, so I talked to them and encouraged them to keep trying because even though in Taiwan we do not have to and might be a little bit resistant to work remotely, but it is now many countries working style, and we do not know what will be the normal after COVID. So it's always better to be prepared and get ready. Thank you.
Okay. I'd love to point out that I love that your presentation was like a story, and then you backed up your story with resources, because that was it was so entertaining. And then also what I caught that you did that threw me off guard, but also I liked it, was you asked a question out loud about your parents, and then you answered it. Mm-hmm. You said, okay, well, this is why. And I was like, what? I thought that was really cool. Just drew my attention a lot more to your presentation. Thank you.
I appreciate that you offered a solution of being ready for change as opposed to reacting to change. Because, I don't think that's good advice.
I like that you were your parents' own consultant.
Yeah.
They came to you and asked you how they should fix the problem, and it's really cute to see that they appreciate what you're learning, and you were able to show them the research that's connected to what you're learning, and what they're currently going through. And I really loved how simple your slides were. And I see that you've grown from your presentation. I know you seemed a little nervous at the end, right? You're like, ah, finally it's over. But you did such a great job. And good use of like increasing your volume.
I loved it. It was great. I really appreciated your use of a personal connection, right? A very meaningful personal story that you could express to us to make us care, right? You want to make your audience care, whether it's relevant to them or whether they can relate to it. Like we all have parents, right? We all have family members. However easy or difficult it is for them to take our advice. We just had Thanksgiving, so I don't know what your Thanksgiving conversations were like. My parents don't like my advice all the time, but or at least my ideas. They think I'm weird. But I loved this. Like it was so heartfelt and interesting to see what the cultural differences may be of the normalcy, right? It hasn't maybe become a normal practice, not just for organizations, but the people in Taiwan to know what the etiquette is. Maybe that hasn't been established to the same degree as other parts of the world that had to or were forced into remote work en masse, right? For the general public, for virtually everybody. And I think that etiquette has developed over time, I'm guessing, for all of you. I know in the beginning, there was a lot of grace in if technology wasn't working or if their microphone was still on or if their camera was fuzzy or turned off or turned on or whatever. And slowly but surely, the level of expectation increased to where by the end, I had like professional like lighting with huge like reflectors in my little like studio room, and I had of course a nicer microphone, and I have this 4K camera, and like I had like lots of stuff because I thought the caliber kept increasing in the requirements, the expectation kept increasing. And there was an etiquette about like, okay, we start, everyone has their microphone off, right? And then as you want to interject, and this is how you do it, right? So if we could extrapolate that to maybe some of the early stages of Taiwan in this new type of work, right? It's not required, it's not mandated, they don't have to do remote work, but there certainly are benefits, right? It gives more accessibility to different parts of the population, maybe young parents I'm thinking of, for myself, as when I was younger and had younger kids, there's a lot of physical limitation there that you can't just go and do things because childcare is difficult during a pandemic. Like, what do you do, right? You can't, daycares were closed, everything was closed. So it made it possible to do things when previously it was impossible. So more people could work now than could before. So I think there's a really interesting cultural investigation, we'll call it, into how countries differ. And this research, I mean, the 2014 article was China, but the other research is primarily like Western, right? So I'm curious, and this isn't part of your presentation, I'm just really curious what your thoughts and maybe experiences. Do you think there would be cultural differences between what the expectations are and how people use remote work in different parts of the world?
Because in Taiwan, I mean, like collectivism, we emphasize like a group.
Sure.
Together, we work together,
Yeah.
come out together. So I think remote working hasn't been really accepted in Taiwan.
Yeah.
But it's always better to come up with a solution.
Yeah.
If we cannot meet, like because in this May, the pandemic was really like worse in Taiwan, but now it's under control.
Okay.
And at that time, students aren't able to go to school,
I
but employees still have to go to work.
Oh.
So that's quite weird, but at that time, students like staying at home, so many employees have to get some day off to
Yeah.
take care of this.
Right.
And that was amazing because many people are complaining
Yeah.
because the organizations they are not ready for this.
Right.
So I think there must be some differences,
Yeah.
but it's better to like change
Mhm.
because
I'm curious. I mean, I don't have personal experience in Taiwan at all, but just in like South Korea, I know that gaming was really big, still very big market, like internet gaming and gaming stuff. No, gaming, like playing games, like virtual games, mass player games. And I'm curious because that's a younger generation thing, right? And I'm curious because there is this collectivism, Korea too, very collectivistic. And I know that people would go to places and play games together, like a PC bang, like they would play together. But you're also playing like virtually together. And I know that it's still there's a team, right? And these team members, they could be playing next to each other, but they don't have to be. They could be in different houses, different places, playing together. And I'm really curious what that might look like over time as those generations go into the workforce and have this experience of years of playing or communicating regularly, intensely with each other, having these, meetings, and they're not meetings, but these kind of pseudo meetings with each other, and if that might have an impact as that workforce matures and gets into places where they have to have virtual meetings and things. Is that a thing in Taiwan, or I don't know?
I think so, but I don't so I don't know.
Yeah.
I can have an insight because, like in Philippines, a lot of places are very rural. So, like network and like connection is very hard. Especially, my mom was a teacher back in the Philippines, and I know that sometimes he would, have a Zoom as a guest speaker. But the problem with that is students are being virtual, and the hard thing about it is that internet connection is like one of the hardest things in like places like third world countries.
Yeah.
So like the question that I've always thought is, if society is moving forward with remote work, what happens for those who get left behind? So that's something that just a thought that I've been thinking about, like the people like in my hometown, like how is remote work kind of affect the whole society? And I know that there are a lot of things, so much to do. So I don't know, it's just a thought.
Yeah. That's a great point. Thank you, Jojo. Appreciate that. Thank you, Yunchen. Very good job. I still am like thoroughly impressed with your presenting in another language. That's amazing. You're so good.
I practiced many times.
You're so good. I wish I could speak or present in Korean as well as you could present in English. Oh, you're amazing. So your family, your parents are in Taiwan?
Yeah.
And you're here by yourself?
Yeah, but my parents also like the company headquarters in Thailand.
Okay.
They have some
Okay.
So I have someone that I knew,
Good.
or I would be like,
Anytime you're ready, Miani, we are focused on you. Okay, I will totally ignore you.
Hi everyone, my name is Miani, and today I'm going to be talking about remote work and what I think is what is working great at my company and what I don't think is working so great. So, in one of the articles we read, Reimagining the Post-Pandemic Workforce, the authors went into multiple different areas and ways that you can improve your hybrid working model. For GHJ, since the pandemic, we've obviously moved to remote working, and specifically in the audit department that I work in, we normally would go into clients. So although our office has now been opened back for individuals to come in, our team just hasn't really taken that opportunity because it's not normal for us to work in the office. So my whole team is fully remote. And while I was reading through this article, I was actually pleasantly surprised with the amount of situations that our firm has implemented over time. And I just wanted to kind of like go over what I think has been going great. So the first one is minding the time zone gap. We have employees that work all over the country. We also have outsourcing in India and South Africa. So we have fully expanded our working hours. Employees are allowed to create flexible working schedules, which allow them to keep their commitments to their home or anything outside of work. In addition, we've tried to keep teams together, which allows for seniors and managers and staff to really understand how to communicate effectively with one another and understand each other's working styles, which just increases productivity throughout the teams. And then lastly, we've really cultivated informal interactions, which has been kind of creating meetings that have no agenda. And in those agenda, team members are allowed to speak about whatever they want to. What did you have for lunch? What did you do over the weekend? Or maybe just like ask questions about work. And I think that's really boosted engagement. So while all of that is great and our firm has like been working really well remotely, I do think that we have one huge piece that's missing, and that's effective training. We've received so much feedback that the employees that we've hired post-pandemic that have gone through onboarding virtually are not up to par, not working up to speed at the rate that's been like historically normal after like weeks of training. And so I want to make some propositions. I want to make some propositions to my company to improve our virtual onboarding, since I believe that it'll be continuing for now. So what's our current training model? We have 2 weeks of pre-recorded training sessions where the new hires have to watch these videos. Along with that, we have assignments and like other things that they can complete to ensure that they're like retaining that information. During those 2 weeks, they have virtual luncheons and check-ins with their assigned buddy that will then stay with them for their first full year at our company. And these lunches allow them to ask questions and stuff like that, just to like, again, check in. And then we end with 1 week of shadowing where they are assigned to an employee and you kind of get to shadow essentially, so you get to watch what they're doing, go to their meetings, but the training team doesn't have any control over exactly what's happening in those shadowing sessions. So while 3 weeks of training I know is like not really heard of, like that is like amazing, I still think that there's ways to make this better. So my first recommendation is live training sessions. Before the pandemic, all of the training sessions were live and we had facilitators, whether those were employees or we would even bring on outside people. So I'm not necessarily sure like why we haven't thought to start that again. I know obviously it'll take from each individual person's work, their own workload, but I think it's something that would be really beneficial to invest in. Then I think that these lunches and check-ins should be with not just the buddies and other employees, even maybe employees that we don't plan on scheduling them with, but it gives them an opportunity to run in or connect with other members of the department, because the odds of running into a team member on your way to the bathroom at your house are 0. So that's not the option. So it really just allows you to connect with the rest of the department. And then lastly, I think that week of shadowing should also be with multiple team members for similar reasons, just to connect with multiple instructors. Now, while I think those are great recommendations that I came up with, I kind of wanted to pose a question back to you guys, because my ultimate recommendation that I really want to give my company, but I'm like scared to give my company, is to tell them to require employees to come in for training in person. I can understand that that leads to a bunch of like hoops and issues with the pandemic and vaccinations and all that kind of stuff, because we do have a company in Los Angeles. I just really wanted to know, I want to ask a question to everybody. If you were hired to a remote position and they were like, you can work remote, whatever the case, flexible working hours, but for the first however many days or how many weeks you have to come in for training, like, would you be open to that? I guess like by raise of hands or nods of heads, whatever. Yeah, okay. So I agree that I think a lot of people would understand the benefit of that and like understand it. I understand 3 weeks if you live in like Chicago and we're like, we're gonna fly you to LA for 3 weeks and leave your family, like that's not realistic. But I do feel like something along those lines. And then my next question is, we do try and onboard employees all at the same time. So say there's 3 employees starting, 2 of them are like, yeah, LA, I'm there. And one of them's like, I want to stay virtual. Do you think it makes sense to have that one individual kind of like watch a session that's happening live, or like should they do pre-recorded? Thoughts? Anybody? Yes.
I would do live because they can interact with people.
Oh, yeah, it's like in teams and stuff like that. I guess when I was like thinking about it, I was like, it just feels like I would feel so left out. I have like FOMO, but like, you know, like stuff like that. But and it might be like distracting potentially. Yes,
I
Tiana?
also agree that they should be doing something live if they're going to be doing virtual. That's kind of something with our consulting project that we talked about during our SME interviews, was that there's a lot of people that think that they already know the training. And so even if they go through it, they're not paying attention because they're like, no, I already know this, I don't need this, even though they do.
I fully agree with that. And I think it just like boosts engagement. So yeah, I do plan on making these recommendations. I guess I just want to run it by you guys first because, I mean, yeah, someone that gets paid more than me will make the final decision. But thank you guys for listening. And,
I really enjoy how you always come prepared with a solution and why you think it's a good idea and the fact that you thought it through the whole time. And so I really enjoy that you do that. I'm looking forward to hearing what you come up with for presenting to your team. My only other feedback would be take a deep breath. I've been breathing for you on that.
I know. I don't think you were here for my last one because that one was bad. Like I was like, I was like choking on my own breath. So thank you.
I encourage you to walk in that, to stand your safety now and just be empowered by the presence that you have, be able to come and command the room and get attention and use that to present and have people stay focused.
Thank you so much.
Your breathing is getting better though.
Thank you.
I was looking at this one, and I remember like halfway through, I was like, okay, she's holding it in. Okay, and there it is, it's out. Okay. Like this time, like you did a much better job. It wasn't like in and then talk. And it wasn't like that. It was like I think you're getting there. You're getting there.
Thank you.
It was way better than last time. So like good improvement. Good job.
Yes.
It's very relative, informational, and the architecture on the slides is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I typed in remote like into the thing. And I'm like, this looks techie savvy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you did a really good job. I mean, I understand getting nervous, so like I totally get that. But definitely, it's gotten so much better, and you're a very like charismatic person. So it just like it's really easy to stay engaged with like when you're speaking. So it's just really good.
Yeah, you can't tell I have a mask on, but just watching you present just makes me so happy. Like it's so fun and joyful because you're happy, fun, and joyful, but also like interesting. Like, it's great. It's really, really good. Charismatic and engaging. So good. I really like that. I would say as others said, you have a wonderful presence. Just breathe and take your time. Like you don't have to rush through anything. You can have pauses. You can take a moment. I don't know what your normal like speaking pace is.
It's fast.
Normally,
I
just
think I
normal
talk
conversation?
fast.
Yeah.
But I'm not normally like
That's-
breathing hard, you know? So like I think that's like me being scared on top of the fact that I already talk really fast. So it's like I just like run out of
Yeah. Well, finding a way to like incorporate that, even pauses,
Yeah.
to like strategically place them, or like little things for yourself to remember or do to try and give yourself the opportunity to breathe, so that it's not as much of an issue, but it's not terrible.
It's just you guys. I
Yeah.
don't do this at work. So I love you.
Yet, I say that yet. There will be a time. Someone as so talented as you are, you cannot hide forever. They're going to put you in a position of leadership someday, and you'll be the one making these decisions and what to do in the remote work. I love that you asked the question to everyone. I would say that's a great way to get engagement. I don't know what everyone else's response was. I mean, I saw a lot of hands, but as you're saying it, my thought process is, if a company wants me to be there in person, it demonstrates to me the seriousness to which they take onboarding. And I want to be there. Like if I'm starting a new job, think about anyone that starts a new job. You're really excited, right, Hannah? You are excited to start that new job. And whatever they're willing to support you with and offer you with, like, hey, we want you in person. You're like, yes, I will drive 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever the distance every day for those. It's not forever. It's a
Yeah.
short 3 weeks or whatever. That's really doable. But also the research demonstrates that if we're going to do virtual, starting in person is really powerful to that commitment, that engagement, building relationships, and then you go remote. So I'm not surprised that the people that had already had the training, the people that had already had relationships, they tend to do well because they already have it, right? But if you're trying to learn a whole new thing with a 2-week video, I can't imagine how mind-numbingly painful that would be. It sounds horrible. So if you give me the option, I'll sit in traffic for as long as it takes to be able to be in person with other people, or just to be in the presence of people that are trying to give me the information I need to know and be able to interact with me. And even like the video, they're so heavily curated and polished that they don't actually tell you the thing you need to know sometimes. Like, not the like, well, here's what we say, but here's what you really have to do. Like, that's what people do. The videos don't do that, right? So I think there's tremendous benefit with jumping through whatever hoops are necessary to get the people there in person for a brief 2-week, 3-week time frame. Even more, even 1 week. We'll do 1 week in person, 1 week virtual, or in training. But you got to start in person. I think the value is tremendous. So I love the idea.
I'm
Yeah.
just like scared they're gonna be like, well, COVID, you know, but I mean, I get it. So,
But it's not your job to make that decision. You could introduce and say, here are the benefits to it, and they could make that decision. That's okay, and it's all right.
Also, if somebody is in like Chicago and they want to do the in-person training, would they be open to paying for them to travel?
we did it before the pandemic, so, yeah. So I really think they're just like afraid with the whole like that like requirements and like that kind of, which I can understand, I guess. So yeah.
I mean, proof of vaccination or a recent test is not that hard.
Yeah.
Low bar. People are going to basketball games at CBU. That's the same requirement. Like, if you're willing to go to a concert or any type of big event, and you're talking about your career, I'm going to do that. Thank you. Great job. I mean, it just had those rings for the mouse click. So I could pay the big bucks.
Hello. My name is Dacia. Tonight I'm going to be talking about remote work culture. So just to begin, where is remote work today? So from 2005 to 2018, there's been a 173% increase in remote working. So obviously before COVID, remote working wasn't really you didn't really hear about it a lot. So only 3.4% of people did remote working. And then obviously after COVID, about 70% of full-time people did go remote for obvious reasons. And then now it's kind of projected at the end of this year, 2021, that 30% of people will be full-time remote working. Globally isn't something that is not heard of. There's 16% of companies that are working globally. And then for those people who are working remotely, 99% of them want to continue for obvious reasons. This is just a TikTok, hopefully it'll work. Well, I was just saying, working from home. Basically, you're in your blanket, you're eating chips, the phone rings, and you're like, oh my God, I gotta answer. You're doing dishes, you're like, hold on, this is Jake from State Farm. You're playing your music, you're like, yeah, all I want for Christmas, oh, Jake from State Farm. Basically, working from home, your kid, you're like, get him on the phone. Got it. Good. Okay. So how does remote work culture affect company culture? So it's really important to have a healthy culture. So traditionally, we all know the office job. So you're able to see your employers and your coworkers in person. Any answers that you have, those or any questions, answers are answered, immediately because you're able to get to them, fairly quickly because you're interacting in person. Remote working, it's many benefits. You have flexible schedules. You're able to work on your own time. It is an attractive option for a lot of companies, and nowadays a lot of people are preferring to work from home. So obviously companies are probably, saving money. They don't want to, drive the employees and everything. So it's important to just make a good work culture. So I want to talk about 6 different areas of how to improve or have a positive work culture. One of them is clear expectations. So it's really important to kind of just set stone like certain deadlines or expectations that you expect from one another. And then also to have trust. So obviously working from home is very different than working from the office. So you can't really go up to your employees or your coworkers and see if they are staying on task, doing maybe the work that you want them to do, and kind of seeing how they're delivering things before they actually deliver it. So you can't really micromanage anything. So you kind of have to trust that they're going to deliver results that are great, and then kind of have that reciprocated. So if you trust them, they will trust you. Third is open communication. So 20% of people say that communication and remote working is probably one of the biggest issues. Likewise, you're sending out emails to one another, you're having a couple hours, or you never know when they're going to reply back. And that's, obviously a big issue. So it's difficult to, not have an office to report to and not be able to see somebody in person. And a lot of miscommunication when it does come to maybe deadlines or what an assignment needs to have. So you do need to have that open communication, be able to have a space where you feel free to open to different opinions from one another and share ideas. Okay. And then measuring performance to output. So you want to have your employees have more results oriented. Prioritize those results and deliverables and align your goals with what your boss or your other team would want to do. Second is flexible schedules. So obviously 53% of Americans say that the best benefit to remote working is the flexible schedules. If you have a doctor's appointment or you have a family function, you don't really have to worry about feeling anxious or scared to, talk to your boss, get that time out of there, or having to, take a couple hours off of work. You're able to, do that simultaneously, have a healthy work-life balance. Engage employees. This is the biggest challenge. Obviously, there's people who are extroverts, people who are introverts. Introverts, they're going to love it. Extroverts, they're probably going to feel, isolated, feel like they can't really talk to anyone. 19% of people report they're feeling lonely. It's hard to feel engaged when you're just kind of talking to a screen, or if you just kind of communicate with your team only via email and you don't have any sorts of maybe Zoom calls and stuff like that. I kind of feel like your sense of belonging to the company or to the organization. So it's really important for companies to have one-on-one meetings, to exchange feedback, and to recognize well done work or achievements that their employees have made. And it also improves higher loyalty and less turnover. So what's the future of remote working? So obviously it's increased from COVID-19. 61% of hiring managers do say that they do want to continue or will towards the future push to remote working. Projection, 73% of people or teams are projected to work remotely by 2028. 74 businesses plan to have some of their workers working remotely permanently. And then a lot of things that we are seeing now, hybrid workplace. So, and that's the same thing we obviously have seen in schools and stuff like that today. So, they're working remotely maybe half of the week and then coming in a couple days of the week. So that's just something I think if they want to balance remote life and office work. I know with COVID-19, some have and some are projected to kind of give their employees that option. If you feel safely or you want to come back to the office, go ahead. If not, then you can stay from home. So they will have that mixture of people in the office and people not in the office. Okay, so this is just a graph of the projection and what it did look like. So this is 2019 and then pre-COVID, post-COVID, and how it's looking. So we can obviously see there's a growth, 13.2 versus 65% are entirely remote. And then we do kind of see that there's, like I said, from 10.2% to 73%. That's a high growth from remote working. And so this is kind of just like you said, average 21.8 plans to go fully remote compared to 13.2 before COVID. I do think COVID did have a lot to do, obviously, with the growth of remote working. So now that we're kind of post-COVID, even with the vaccine, data is showing that people are just wanting to work remotely more. I mean, I understand. I do have an aunt who worked for an insurance company, and she was in the office pre-COVID. Post-COVID, her office is now hybrid. She chose to stay home because she has 2 kids and a husband, so she wanted to, have that time. But there were her other 2 coworkers who did choose to go back to the office because they wanted that office environment, talk to their coworkers, have an easier communication. Just, online and working from home just wasn't for them. So I think in the future, yeah, more companies are probably going to turn to remote just because of the benefits and being able to balance and everything. But hopefully, I think there's also that a lot of companies are now doing hybrid too. So I think it's going to be a mix of both, and we'll see what happens, in 2028. And that's it. Thank you.
I just want to express this kind of joy I felt when you brought up this really good point that I've actually watched a TED Talk about how to be an effective leader, and you had discussed that to do that you have to trust your employees, which means to give them the space that they need. So you're not kind of hovering over them doing their work, but trusting that their work, whatever they're doing, is complete and the reason why they're there. So
Yeah. That's, it's a big challenge doing it, like I said, online, because you're not able to look over their shoulder. You're not able to go up to their desk and see what type of progress that they're doing so far. Obviously, you can probably ask them to maybe submit a draft before, like their final project. At that point, you kind of just have to trust that they're going to deliver good results or a good, project after, and kind of just trust and have them take that own responsibility and motivate them, have them grow the motivation for themselves to want to have great deliverable content.
Overall, great presentation. I feel very casually having a conversation with you. Like you're just feeding me with your knowledge. But I wanted to ask a question: what you think about companies such as manufacturing companies like Amazon, who requires in-person work? How do you think, since the pandemic and work from home is being more increasing, what do you think about those employees working from those places?
I feel like that's hard because when I first thought of Amazon and other people, let's say working from home besides Amazon, more people at home, they're probably instead of in-person buying, I just feel like they're just a lot more online buying. So I think Amazon warehouse-wise is so hands-on, and I think I don't know much about Amazon, so I'm trying to answer the best I can. I know resources-wise and all that they can probably do in person, but I'm just guessing the ones that you have to go in person, I think it would be a little bit difficult.
Yeah, following with the question, I know a couple weeks ago we talked about automation, and I wanted to ask what are your thoughts about automation and how it plays a role in the post-pandemic era?
I did a paper a couple years ago about the rise of automation, and I mean, we are seeing a rise in a lot of factory manufacturers. And I know that leads to a lot of people, you know, losing their jobs off of that and everything. But I don't know, I think with COVID, with remote working, a lot of people are turning to technology. And I know a lot of that is affecting people's jobs and where they work pre-COVID. So I think projected wise, I just think a lot of companies are going to try to just have more trust in, technology than they did with their employees prior. Not really knowing it, but but
That's awesome.
yeah.
No, thank you for that insight.
Anything else?
So my remote presentation, there's an article that answers your question. I talked about it. It says they also do red lottery and they extend their study for remote held in 2000 tax today. So here
And the person,
Yeah.
you did a really good job commanding the audience and just kind of speaking what does. You seem very confident up there and like it was just like a very casual conversation. One thing that I know that we've kind of all been telling people is just to watch how much you're putting on your slides and don't really rely on those too much. And then I noticed that you did really better when you weren't looking at your slides. Like you would kind of fumble through your
I don't know, I have my background.
Yeah. Yeah, you can do so much better without them, and I feel like you have clear knowledge of what you're saying. Just having so much on your PowerPoint is just going to keep us a little bit more distracted because I'm kind of reading on there, and then some of the stuff you don't say because you realize that you want to kind of set it in a different way. So keeping our attention on you and our focus on you and not so much on the PowerPoint, that would be a good way to kind of balance that. But overall, I think you did really well, especially with this being basically your first one, right? So good job, and you didn't seem nervous. So
I am so nervous. I'm just good at hiding my feelings.
good quality.
Thank you.
great quality for that.
Yeah, I know.
I thought it was great. You did a really good job, really comfortable. You look very comfortable. You're great at faking that if you're not. So yeah, I think the way in which you speak, like Joser said and others, are very accessible, right? You feel like it's just a very informative, accessible kind of information, even though you gave a lot of statistics and data, which is great.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have did that much.
No, it's
was
great.
Excited. I kept researching and I was just getting through numbers and I was like, this is so important. And I didn't know what to choose, so I just was like, you know what, let the meat cake.
Yeah, there you go.
So I was like, if you don't want it, well.
But even to have so much data and to have it still feel so casual and not like just inundated with numbers, it felt very accessible. And so I want to compliment you in that. I think you did a really good job kind of managing those two difficult things to do. In terms of like how work happens, like the remote part, the pre and post and how it all operates, I think it's a fascinating topic. And of course, we've learned a lot. We're still growing a lot and developing, how we understand that operates and what are the key components, right, to facilitating that from both the employee perspective and also from the organization's perspective. And like Lorena said, trust is a major issue. And as you said and found as well, I think it's interesting that we can look at the product, like the thing that workers are doing, and evaluate their competency in that way. But even that requires quite a bit of trust, because what I find, depending on your organization and of course your place in that organization, there's different degrees of trust. So a lot of times they don't actually look at the project that you're doing. They just want to see that you're a diligent, effortful worker, right? So not being in person means they can't not just look at your work, but to see, are you even at your desk, right? Like, are you in the place you're supposed to be? Because if you get the work done in the time frame that you are expected to get it done, it doesn't matter, right? Like if you work 12 hours straight, which you can with remote work, and no one's going to do anything about it, and no one's going to bother you either. Versus if you're in an office of some kind, they can walk by the window or the door, the cubicle, and see if you're where you're supposed to be, right? And I think that's a massive change in the trust that we place on our employees. We have to trust that they can manage their own time, that they can be disciplined in their own work, and that they know what's best for themselves. Like, oh, I need a break right now. I don't know about you, but when other people, I never smoked. And so when other people would take like a smoke break, I always felt like that's not fair. Like they get to take a smoke break and I'm sitting here just doing my thing. I don't get that time. I don't get a 15-minute like go walk around outside break. So yeah. Oh, that's really not fair. That's criminally unfair. That's terrible. So just thinking about trust in not just product, but also in time management, right? And in how people want to structure their day. If you want to do, this is another idea with remote work, like a 4 on, 3 off. So if you can get your work done in 4 days, then you could be rewarded with a 4-day work week. Companies do that, right? Instead of 5 days. So like normally it's 5 days, right? Monday through Friday, you're working all week for the weekend. But what they've done, some organizations will say like you can earn a 4-day work week. If you can get your work done, because it's the same regardless, if you can get it done in 4 days, then you're done in 4 days and you can earn it. And I think that's something we're kind of experimenting with in different ways in remote work, right? In terms of here's the thing you need done, however that happens, whether you pull a 24-hour straight work session on this thing just to get it done, or you space it out and do whatever you need to do, as long as you get it done. And I think that takes tremendous trust in different ways, right? And we don't have the constant surveillance, right, of people. But it also is difficult because sometimes people need it. Right? Some people need to know they're being watched to stay diligent. Sometimes people need to know that they're being held accountable. So it's difficult to kind of manage that and see what the trade-offs are, because sometimes they might not be reachable if we're sending emails and phone calls and things. And they
Yeah,
just,
with that 16 before the 16% globally. They've already, people who have the global remote working, they've done it for how many years?
Quite a while, yeah.
Versus the companies now who, in 2020, they just started doing it. So they're still learning
exactly.
how to do it versus companies that have done it for a couple of years or decades. They kind of have it mastered and how to manage everything.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Great insight.
Yeah.
She's going with you.
I have to present now.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Cassandra, and although we were learning about remote work, I wanted to focus on the ability to choose in 2022. And I wanted to start off with a quote, kind of looking into the perspective of what remote work was like in the past and what the idea of remote work was, and moving into our current idea. So we have 1995, the information superhighway will mean anyone can do anything from anywhere. 2015, must be willing to relocate to San Francisco. A very different meaning towards remote work, what we thought we were going to have, but not what we actually have. You have to work in San Francisco to have the base there. Moving forward, I really gravitated towards a Harvard Business Review article that focused on autonomy
And the big headline said, "Forget flexibility, your employees want to be autonomous." And this is focusing also in the hybrid model in remote work that we're looking into. And this is specific to working from home, but also having the ability to work in the office. So within this article, the current work trend that we're seeing is having medium autonomy and medium flexibility. And in 2020, we saw that most people were forced to go work remote. But in 2021, we're slowly trying to bring these people back into the office and try to assimilate back into social contexts. And we're looking at the fact that we are seeing success within medium autonomy, which is allowing people to work from anywhere, but we're allowing them to come into the office based on the minimum date to be in there. With this article had a survey based on a tech company that was specific to ask their employees, do you enjoy being autonomous? Do you like making the choice to come into work? And they said, we love it. So much so that they wanted to go to another company that allowed for even more autonomy and allows them to choose what their work environment is going to be like. So with our current practices at Prime Healthcare, going back to my job experience, our current salary employees are required to come into the office, but if their position allowed to, you can work remote. Our hourly employees, on the other hand, can only work remote if they're asking for an accommodation in terms of disability. So they really don't have access to work remote at all. And this is kind of hindering our current relationship with specific departments. Although our environment currently doesn't provide autonomy, I think it would really be beneficial to do so. And for example, our current IT department and our data quality department are very, very self-driven, data-driven, and don't require any social interaction most of the time. We're seeing the most turnover occur in these departments. I sit in on the exit interviews. Typically, I ask how their experience was, just trying to get general feedback after the surveys. I've tried to pay attention as much as possible to those that are within IT and data quality. Most of the responses are, this other company is providing me the benefit to work remote because I can do this at home. And so to that, I think to provide this information to our current company and our current employer to inform them that we could probably move into a hybrid model, start to reinvent the wheel, think about the future of competition among other industries. Healthcare is struggling a lot right now, but if we can provide this benefit to employees, we can retain them as much as possible to make them as happy as we can. In life, change is inevitable. In business, change is vital. And I think to that, I would encourage our company to change. We need to think about what the trends are going towards, how we can implement them, and how we can succeed. As students, I also would like to encourage being autonomous within your own choices, making those choices to benefit you in your career opportunity. We're living in a time where candidates can go anywhere. You're being offered sign-on bonuses because they need it. So I would strongly recommend that everybody look into different options. Think about what's going to benefit you the most and continue to be autonomous. Thank you.
That was really great. I know last time you presented, you said you wanted to get out of kind of the HR kind of the mindset to like blah blah blah. But
Yeah,
if that
stop
makes
being so
sense.
corporate.
Yeah, and you actually executed this well to make it personal and also to make it kind of actionable as well. And I love how you structured your presentation. It's simple. Also, the context is through word of mouth, so that was really engaging. And yeah, thinking of something this. Well, the only thing is probably the slide going back and forth. I learned that myself.
Oh, I
too.
was so upset when I did that.
Yeah, but overall it was great.
inspired.
Yeah.
Like you were like, if you weren't like overly like selling it, but you were passionate enough about it to make me passionate about it. So I think that that's a very rare ability that you know, some people have that gift, and like you absolutely have that gift. That was fantastic. That was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really liked your slide design, how you know, focused on the graphics on most of them and very little text, and that focused attention on you, which was good because you were so comfortable up there, and you know, no note cards, no nothing. The what you were saying was the focus of you know, what I was thinking about, and what I was paying attention to. I wasn't trying to read a bunch of stuff up there. So I think that really helped with the point stuff.
I think you did phenomenal. Right when you finished, I was like, wow, that was amazing. So great job. Thanks for sending it down to me. And yeah, I mean, like Tiana said, it just makes you feel inspired to stay autonomous and know that if you're not offered something that you enjoy or would possibly enjoy, just know that there's other places out there that will offer that to you, you know, and having that belief in yourself, and like your talents and what's the job place and environment like. So anyways, great job.
Thank you. I wanted to share that, but because we talked about it in Dr. Nels's class, and that really changed my focus to say I have the ability to choose what I'm doing based on our previous speaker, which is so great. And so now I'm like, I have control of my life. I'm like, let's project it to everybody else. Let them know they have control. They don't have to be stuck. So I'm glad you guys received it really well.
I'd like to just bounce off of what Tiana was saying. It was very inspirational because you weren't just talking about the topic, you were giving me a reason to listen and how can I benefit. So that was amazing. I just like had those small tips. There were moments with your breathing.
Yeah.
You were a little bit nervous, but I mean those were only small moments in your presentation, so don't let that get you down. But other than that, it was amazing. Great job.
You have incredible balance, a great balance between professional and approachable, right? Between inspirational and informative. It's really nice. Great balance between all of those things. So I want to commend you for that. I think you did exceptional there. It was really polished, right? You have an incredibly like well polished and professional demeanor. So I don't mean to say they're very corporate. Not that. I'm just saying you as a person in your delivery are very professional, and I appreciate that. I think that's great. Don't run away from that at all, unless you're teaching like kindergarten or something. Then it's going to be different. But you know, for this environment, I think it was perfect. I think you did a really good job of that. So I enjoyed it. I think you did a really good job, as people said. It's great. You know, minor things like just take a moment to pause or breathe. But it wasn't terrible in that way at all. It wasn't distracting. And I wasn't holding my breath with you, right? I was breathing comfortably, so I was okay. And I also appreciate that you were balanced in your perspectives of the organization needs to be responsive to and aware of the autonomy that individuals want and accommodate accordingly. And then you took the perspective of the employee, of people, of us, and to say, look, you should have the autonomy that you want or need for your life. And you can find that if you're willing to look and pursue and have some agency, and you get to choose, right, where you want to be. So I love that you like took both sides of that and didn't just say, hey, organizations, let me talk to you and give you the lowdown. This is how you best manipulate your employees. Just try and tell them about all this autonomy that they can have, and then like really grind them until they're exhausted and tired. So I liked that you had that balance. So it's very helpful for us to hear both sides. So thank you for that. Yes, very good.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and today I'm going to talk about working from home. First, I'm actually going to show a video. I work from home, and it's my walk tour. You'll probably see some Santa Clauses. We have our Christmas decorations out. And then out to my backyard. And I saw my dog. And then I was this massive of a Cassandra up here. And then we're at my office. My dad and my dog again. So that's my walk to work. I don't technically work remotely because we all work in that office. So, but I do work from home and I do get the benefits from that. So let's talk about the benefits. So no traffic. We don't get stuck in traffic. That's the good thing about working from home is that you don't have to sit on the freeway and miss time with your family, waste gas. It's actually people who work from home, they end up saving about $5,000 a year just on gas, not eating out, those kind of things. So that's an added benefit. And then you get the work-life balance and the flexibility with that. Another thing that's really interesting is less sick days that the company is like losing you to, because think about it. Right now, if you're going into an office, if you're exposed, you have to isolate. If you're sick, you have to stay at home. Even if it's just a cold, you're like, well, I don't really want to get other people sick. But another great thing for you as an individual and us to think about later is I know a lot of people who are parents and they always talk about how their sick days, they're not their sick days, they're their kids' sick days. If your kid gets sick, you have to sit at home with them and watch cartoons all day because they can't go to school and get everyone sick. So if you're sitting at home at your desk, you can have your kid watch cartoons. And then when you get sick, they're your sick days again. You get to take that back into your life. Another thing is also the company gets to save some money because they don't have to pay for the office space. I know my parents one time looked into getting an office space, and for their small business, it was going to be $50,000 a year. And that's not even counting like the cleaning, like the maintenance outside. It's a huge cost. So the more people you can keep remote, it's going to be cost effective. So there are some negatives. We've talked about isolation. Another thing is increased stress, and that's associated with like your desk is right there always. Your work comes home with you. You don't just get to leave it at the office. I know a lot of us probably feel that way with schoolwork right now. Like I can always be studying. I can always be doing something else. And when you bring your work home, you have that with you still. But there is a lot of positive and negatives, and that's something that we as individuals have to weigh. If we've talked about how when you're in the office, you're more likely to get promotions, you're more likely to see people. If you're an extroverted person who wants to move up quickly in your career, it's probably going to be better for you to be in the office. But if you're an introvert, values family time, and really wants to be there for their kids, doesn't want to commute, then you weigh your options. You see what works better for you. So we saw this before. Between 2005 and 2018, remote work rose 173%. And so this has nothing to do with COVID. This was pre-COVID. So what does it have to do with? Well, it's the technology increases. And what it makes me think is add another 15 years, add another 20 years. What's our world going to look like? Are we gonna be all remote? Are we not gonna leave our houses? Are we gonna be in that metaverse? So us as IO people have to think, it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative, it doesn't matter if remote work is a good thing or a bad thing, it's probably gonna be our reality, and we have to deal with it, and we have to figure out how to work with it. So what are some things we can do? First, I would say we need to look at changes in leadership and management. So we have supervision is going to be a lot different. Again, we don't get to watch people at their desk doing what they need to do. But what are some things we can do instead of that? Well, it's not necessarily a good thing to just be looking at people and saying, oh, they must be doing their work because they've been sitting there for 8 hours. We've talked about going on social media, online shopping, all these things that we can do sitting at our desk, making it look like we're doing our work. Even if someone's sitting behind you, have you ever opened your email, just stared at it for 10 minutes, I really don't want to move on to the next thing. You can fake it. So what are some better ways that we can go about this? Well, check-ins, okay, send me an update of whatever you're working on. Actually looking at their work after they finish it before it gets submitted to the next person, seeing what the quality is, seeing what the quantity is, and going from there to decide whether or not they're a good employee, rather than, oh, they show up, their stuff gets turned in on time. Well, how long is it taking them and how good does it actually look? So we're going to want to look at, so some other things we can look at is inspiration. How are we going to motivate employees from far away? And how are we going to hire people? So I know a lot of us have probably been looking on LinkedIn right now and looking at all the jobs that are out there. If you're looking at remote jobs like I am, if you see requirements, a lot of the people are saying that they want self-motivated workers. They want people that can work from home and get things done and not have to be bothered with. But is that really a good thing? Should they be looking for self-motivated workers, or should they be presenting motivated management that wants to motivate you, that they're going to check in with you and they're going to say, oh, you're a new employee. We don't expect you to know what to do, and we don't expect you to just figure it out. We're going to be there for you step by step and be tracking with you and motivating you and actually helping you figure this out. So some other IO things we can do is job analysis. There's going to be a lot of changes with remote work, as there already is. So people have different responsibilities that they're going to get, and even new jobs. Think about all the IT jobs that just got created with COVID and are now at big corporations. Another thing is turnover rates. Maybe some of us are going to do research into turnover rates for the same company versus the people who work at home versus in the office. There's going to be a lot of research on looking into the future and figuring out what is the best way for us as IO professionals to help these companies figure out their remote work situation. So today I went over the positives and negatives of remote work and the fact that it's going to be here, and we just have to figure out how, as IO professionals, we're going to help the corporations navigate the future of working at home and remote work. Thank you.
I think you did really well. I really like the, I know this word, inflection. It's not when your voice changes tone. Whatever. You do a really good job of changing this to your voice to engage each other, ask questions and stuff like that. I think it's really engaging. It always catches my ears, I guess. But other than that, I think you did a really good job. You did use a little bit of filler words, but we all do. So
I use so
many
much.
times. Yeah, I realized we so.
But thank you. Your dog's adorable.
Have any ethical concerns with potentially surveilling workers when they're at home working? Do you see any potential future problems that we can have, having managers constantly check in with somebody who's in their private space? Should it be a certain time?
I didn't mean in the presentation surveillancing them or looking at them too closely. I just meant more they should be maybe every couple days you submit what you've been working on so they can look at it. Because again, it doesn't matter what they're doing, like what you're doing with your time. It just matters that you're presenting quality work that people are actually paying attention to and following up with.
Do you look on LinkedIn while you're at your job currently? Is that possible?
No, because it's the LinkedIn on my computer is actually logged into the company LinkedIn. So I'm like, I do kind of, but like, I'm like, you're like, okay, who's looking at our company?
That's fair. That's fair. So wonderful commute. Love it. Beautiful. Beautiful house. Love the shoes.
Thanks.
Very nice.
They're very white.
They're very white. I thought I'm impressed. Like those are very clean, especially with a dog. That's tough. No, I appreciated the uniqueness, and you tried so many new things. It was fun. Like you tried a video in there, which you had not done before, to the best of my knowledge, and of course it was very personal, so I liked that. You talked about your company, which you've done before, in a way that was, of course, very relevant, right, to this topic, which is awesome. I love that. You brought in the research to emphasize your points, as you always do. You're a great presenter in that way. You have really good content, and you're very professional as well. I think you do a really good job of that. I think you maybe like self-monitor, like how you present really well. So you kind of, you know yourself, and you know kind of what you're doing, like saying so many times, like you know what you're doing. You're aware of that, instead of being surprised, like someone giving you a comment like, hey, you said you had a couple filler words. You were already aware. Someone else might be very surprised by that. So I think that's an incredible skill set that you have, to be able to reflect in the moment, even immediately, like what you're doing and how it's coming across. So I think that's exceptional. I liked how you put a summary at the end. I thought that was really nice. It packaged it and let us know where we're at in this presentation. Like, oh, okay, great. We've moved through these stages, which were really distinct, and I liked that. They're like bookmarked for us. And then we had the summary of like, here's what I told you about, right? We told you all these great things. Now you know these things, and that's the package that you get. That's the present that I have for you, which I thought was nicely wrapped, right? It was really good in that way. So I think it was very well packaged, great presentation. I liked it a lot. Thank you. You present for your company at all? Fair enough. I told my kids about your company.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because we saw a water tower, and I was talking about how they need to be cleaned and painted on the inside. They're like, how do you know so many things, Dad? So, well, I'm amazing.
You can show them the YouTube video.
Oh, there we go.
They're pushing a vacuum thing.
They would be enthralled, I'm sure. My kids love anything with video. I also wanted to let you know, Becca, that I took your name off it, so it's not de-identified. But in the social psychology course, you had a really nice final reflected best self presentation. So I hope it's okay that I showed some students that. Okay, good. I should have asked you before, but it was great. It was really, really good. It was awesome. It's just really thorough. You did a really thorough job of it. Yeah.
You know, I can have it because my Google is not sending me anything.
You've never had period. Okay, I thought you were gonna say yes.
Oh.
So, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day. So if you can with me, can you imagine it's the beginning of quarantine and you get laid off? You're stressing out. You have no idea what to do. You're like, oh my gosh, I need help my family. What can I do? So you start job searching and you find a quality shipping specialist. You get to work from home and it seems amazing. They're sending you items. All you have to do is repackage them and ship them off and make sure everything's going good. And everything is going good. You're able to contact your supervisors. Everything just seems super good. And you're making $1,000 a week for about 4 hours of work. You're like, man, I got the life. I gotta watch TV. I gotta do everything. Until one day, you get a knock on the door. And it's the police questioning you about identity theft. You have no idea what to do. You're frantic. You're hectic. You're like, I have never done anything in my life. Maybe I stole a piece of bubble gum when I was 4. Maybe I don't know what to do. And all of a sudden, you try to get in contact with your company, and all of the numbers. So unfortunately, you have just been part of a remote work scam. So hello, my name is Victoria Torres Clemente, and today I will be talking to you about remote work scams and how to spot them. So some stats about remote work. Remote work has gone up by 12% and 159% in the past 12 years. And remote workers save thousands of dollars on transportation, work attire, food. So it's such an enticing role. People want to work from home. If I could just get out of bed and start my day, that would be great. And 19% of people have become susceptible to remote work scams. About 60% of the US workforce is actually remote right now due to COVID, and the most susceptible age range is 24 through 30. So it is important, and I did want to share this information with you guys. So the most popular scams are reshipping, merchandise scams, nanny, virtual assistants, and fake agencies. With reshipping is the example I told you. Scammers will go ahead and say, hey, you know what? Go ahead and make sure this iPhone is working great. You're like, okay, yeah, let's package it up. And what they're doing is they're using you as a scapegoat in case the credit card that they used is gone. So it doesn't have anything to do with them because you shipped it off, but it's under your name for that credit card theft. And then for merchandise scams, they're telling you, oh yeah, you could buy these luxury items and sell them for such great prices. And this is really common in MLM schemes or multi-level marketing schemes. So when that happens, you are like, yeah, okay, I'll spend $200 to get a bunch to help my hair grow super well. You spend the $200, you will never see that person, you're blocked, and everything's gone. And then you have nanny, career, and virtual assistants. So with this, you're saying, oh yeah, I'll be a virtual assistant, I'll be a nanny. And they're like, yeah, well, we'll give you this $5,000 check, save $3,000 as just a hiring bonus. Yeah, that's super cool. But can you send this $2,000 to us? And all of a sudden, by the time your bank knows it's a bank check, you already are owing the bank $2,000 because you are in charge since you sent to them. And fake agencies, people will go on LinkedIn and pretend that they're an agency just to get your information. They will ask you for your social security, they will ask you for your driver's license, and you're basically, you don't know if it's on the dark web or something's happening, but you've already given up all your information. So I'm going to tell you a few tips. If there is an unprofessional job posting, if there's too many errors or it's looking really weird, more than likely it's a scam. Is there a lot of typos, errors? Do they even highlight what the company is? A lot of times scam companies will go ahead and say, oh yeah, you get to work from home. Yeah, you know what? It's full-time money for part-time work. You're doing all of this just to entice you and make you go, man, like, I want to work from home. I want to make money easy. That sounds amazing. And If the company is vague on what they're doing, a company will tell you a job description, it will tell you the qualifications, and it will tell you the requirements. If it's not doing that, more than likely it's a scam. Second, the interview process. Is it over the phone or on video? A lot of scam companies will actually use text messages in order to have you have an interview. I've never had a text message interview before, but I've actually learned that Amazon for their IT will do some, so that was kind of cool. I thought I would add that in there. And if the company is overeager to hire you, I'm sure you guys are all amazing employees, but by the time you're in the interview, they're like, yeah, we'll give you the job. Like, you're perfect. Literally, your resume is everything. Maybe take a step back. If they're not letting you have a second to think about the job, more than likely, there's a reason why. Third, if they're asking for personal information, especially before or during the interview process, if they're already asking you for your mom's maiden name, where you went to middle school, all of this information, more than likely they're just trying to get the information from you. And it is really scary because a lot of people fall for it. And tip 4, if they're asking you to pay, especially before you start, if they're saying, hey, you know what, you need to get a printer to be able to ship these items out. You need to get this software. You need to pay for this training. They'll even say, hey, we're giving you $1,000. Just send out this $500 so we can pay for this software. You're now down $500 from that stolen credit card. And tip 5, trust your gut instincts. If in the back of your head you're like, man, I'm getting $1,000 a week for 4 hours of work, man, this sounds too good to be true. It's too good to be true. Unfortunately, make sure to ask questions too. In the interview, in the interviews, especially with scammers, all they're gonna do is try to sell it to you. They're literally selling you to get their information from you. So it's best to ask questions, and scammers get nervous. When they don't have an answer, they get hectic. Have you ever heard when someone hears a credit card scam and they're ready to cuss the person out because they're asking more questions or saying, oh, my card number is 12345. And tip 6, which is the most important tip, research. Research is so important. Make sure to look on LinkedIn, make sure to look on Glassdoor and different websites that actually are showing you what the company's reviews are and contact information. Are you actually seeing the person before the interview or before the job? Have you seen a face at least once? Most scammers will never show you their face. And on top of that, does their email look odd? Do they have a company domain? If they're saying, oh no, our company's too new. Oh, well, I want to be available to you all the time, so that's why I'm using Gmail. No, more than likely it's a scam. And if you're still unsure and you're like, well, like, this sounds like an amazing opportunity, this sounds too good to be true, I want to go with it. Check out the Better Business Bureau. So I am telling this because I've actually had several friends who have fallen victim to scams like this. So I thought it was important to share this information. And I added in their name because, well, I'll blast them. And I can go ahead and click the top. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the recent scams available. Or not the scams available, scams. Oh my gosh, but the active scams right now in the United States. And there is over 200,000, like I sat there and I was like, 200,000 active scams. And people aren't taking the time to just critically think about jobs. And I know it's enticing, especially with remote work, and we're hearing all of these benefits. But please always stay cautious. So just a rundown of the tips. Look at the job posting. Is it too good to be true? Is it giving you actual information? How is the interview? If they're asking too much about you and they're not even telling you anything about the company, just trying to get your information, not good. Too much about you, they're asking too much info. You have to pay out of pocket. If you're having to pay for anything, a company will never, ever, 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 ever tell you to pay for something. They will provide it for you. A professional corporation will always provide it for you. So please never, even if they're like, it's $10, save yourself, go get 2 coffees. Like, you got that. And trust your gut. Like, if you're in the back of your head, you're like, man, I don't believe this. It can't be true. It probably isn't true. And do the research. It doesn't take a lot of time, and you'll be saving yourself. So please stay safe, save your time, your personal information, and your money by following these steps. Thank you.
Toku, and I love that personal advert. I remember seeing that when it came out, we'd all laugh, like, should we call it number?
Oh my gosh.
Awesome. Love it.
So you mean to tell me that the things I see on Pinterest about making $1,000 a week aren't true?
Unfortunately,
Oh my
no.
God, I'm so sorry about it. No, I love your presentation. Like I always look forward to your presentations because I know there's gonna be something really crazy that like I didn't know a lot about. I'm gonna have to stand up
Honestly,
for.
I
or
would have
something.
never known about it until my friend called me sobbing. He's like, the police is at my door, the police is at my door. And I'm like, the police, what did you do? He's like, I haven't done anything. And then questioning about the card and identity. And that's, I never knew any of this information. I was like, remote work. Originally, I was going to be like, oh, how to be happy. But I was like, this is actually something really important. And we are the demographic audience for getting scammed.
Wow.
Well, I recently had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn and they were like, oh, I love your profile and it's so interesting. Like, we have a Zoom meeting. And I'm like, sure. And we had this Zoom meeting and I'm almost positive like they were trying to pull me into like an MLM. Yeah. Like, 'cause the whole time she was like, yeah, I'm able to walk away from work and it's so great. Like, I'm only 25 and I can quit my job and I'm going to go live in some country. And so me taking the bait, I'm like, oh, well, how do you do that? She's like, oh, I can't really talk about it, but I can talk to the people that are training me, and then we can set something up. And I'm like, yeah, we're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
Literally, I don't know how many people from your high school are in MLMs or even from college. They're like,
Oh yeah.
hey, like I have this amazing business opportunity for you. You could be your own boss babe and all of
We all know the people that sell doTERRA or the candles or the Tupperware or what we all know. Yeah. But no, I really appreciate it. Like, 'cause it's, I haven't really dived too much into the job search yet, but I plan on it next term. So this is something that I wasn't really familiar with. So thank you so much for the information. Like, yeah, I feel like
happy it was
great.
helpful then.
The only feedback I have is I think on one of your almost last slides, it said like you can add content here. So, but other than that, like I was like, I don't think that's supposed to be there. But other than that, it was perfect. It was amazing.
I just want to say this is so fun, and I really wanted to like make comments out loud, but then I had to stop myself because I'm like, oh wait, I'm fine. It's like when you watch a movie and you want to make some comments. Like I want to do that so bad. But thank you so much for bringing this up. This is really important. We should teach this in high school, by the way. Most target audience is for scammers, like teens or young adults and stuff. Yeah, I really loved it. It was very informative, and I would definitely take it. Well, I did.
Have you watched Mojo from YouTube?
Oh yeah.
I feel like you have that voice that's very
Oh
informational,
yes.
and like it's really engaging. But overall, great presentations. But the only thing that I would, from the beginning of your slide, you had statistics. It was different from what you stated. So I was
I got it. It was 159 in the past 12 years, and I flipped it in my head. I was like, don't think about it. Just keep going.
Yeah, I think it's also about the age. I think that I don't know. I was really confused. But overall, great presentation.
It was so good. So good. The whole time I'm thinking she's so engaging, really energetic. I thought this felt like a TV like newscast, like this just in, millennials getting scammed and how not to do it. Like it was so good, like really, really good. You had like props and knocking on the thing and your phone is going off. Oh, this is so well done. Like I felt like I was had tickets to a theater. It was really nice. So you acted it all really well. Great content, tons of information that I thought was all new to me. I had no idea about any of this stuff, so I thought it was really cool. Yeah.
I mean, I used it to be aware. I even did like a little poll on my Instagram asking like people I know, and it was almost like 20 people who were like, yeah, I've been scammed by it. And, like 20, and I was like, yo, graduated.
It
So
happens to
I think
anybody.
just, like, you're never too old to actually know this information because it's gonna save you that
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. This is like a PSA.
time. I feel like it was a little
Appreciate it.
bit.
Thank you. Good job.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexis Savina and I would like to talk to you guys about working from home.
So I don't know about you, but when the topic came to mind, first thing that I thought of was all the TikToks and Instagram posts for the past year and a half of people talking about rolling out of bed and starting their work, not having to do their makeup and just hanging out with a cat or even staying in all day. And all of these comments highlight the benefits of working from home for employees, but from an organizational standpoint, does this work? And as I'm sure you'll know, the answer is it depends. There are some jobs that are better suited for remote work, but at the end of the day, it can't. People like being able to work from where they want and when they want. And as we know, as Cassandra highlighted, people like autonomy, being able to choose. So this does increase work performance and job satisfaction, which is great. What I would like to talk about today is the flip side of remote work. What about the things that don't really come to mind, that people don't really talk about on the social media posts and the funny TikToks? And the first thing that I want to talk about is the ability to acquire talent. One of the readings we read this week talked about how if you go fully remote, you have access to 100% of the talent. While this is true, it doesn't mean that you can acquire 100% of the talent. Most people, or not most people, a lot of people don't like working from home. So if you have a great job listing, someone might just scroll right by it because they don't want to work from home. The second thing I'd like to talk about is the work-life balance. Some people struggle with finding work-life balance at home more than if they go to the office. So I started like full force. So some people at home, they feel very burnt out because they're bad about setting boundaries for themselves at home. They feel like they're overworking themselves and they don't really know where that line is of, okay, I think I've done enough work for the day. An interesting study I found was that women in particular are having a hard time balancing work-life balance because oftentimes they're trying to play two roles. They're trying to be the stay-at-home mom and the fully remote worker. I'm not saying this is all the time, but I'm sure many of us can relate that women in households are still responsible for cleaning and cooking and taking care of the kids. And so as the cartoon says, oh, it must be so nice being able to work from home. Sometimes it's not. And so a lot of these women in these leadership positions are actually finding that they feel a lot of pressure to be everything all at once for everybody. Obviously, this is problematic, and the study actually suggested that remote work might actually benefit men more than women. One of these reasons is everything I just said, but also it's been shown that men are better about setting boundaries with their own workplace. They're better about saying, I've done my work today, I'm checking out. For women, as I'm sure we know, we can be people pleasers. We can overwork ourselves sometimes. So I thought that was really interesting. But the question still remains, should we be remote or not? And the answer, a suggestion is, we can do hybrid work. So maybe invite people to come into the office 1 to 2 times a week, or be remote 1 or 2 times a week, and just be flexible, see what works. The second thing to keep in mind if you do implement this hybrid culture is the leadership and management style that you're putting out there. Make sure to lead by example. If you're telling people, hey, go ahead and do remote work 1 or 2 times a week, you should do the same so they feel comfortable following that. A lot of people are going to feel guilty for taking that remote work time if their leaders aren't doing the same thing. Finally, make sure to define the expected outcomes. Make sure to list out, this is what I expect from you if you do work from home a couple of times a week. This way you don't get lost in this type of micromanaging. You feel like you always have to watch what you're doing at home. And also people don't work like that burnout feeling because they're doing too much. The last thing I would like to leave you guys with is that we're still learning. At the end of the day, we have gotten a lot of information over the past year from the pandemic and everyone going remote. But keep in mind that if you do implement a hybrid style, keep track of what's working and what's not. Don't just let it go. The second thing is going to be ask for feedback. Ask your employees, hey, maybe you want to try doing 3 or 4 times remote? Do you not like remote work? And with this information, implement changes. Don't be afraid to try something new. Take it back if it's not working. Try something new again. Just be open to adapting new changes and go from there. Because at the end of the day, we are still trying to figure out how remote work works. Thank you.
job of keeping your slides simple, because it was better for me to understand what you were talking about, and also it was applicable to your slides. And so, yeah, other than that, it was great, because they were so simple. I actually remember every single slide, which is nice, which means you did make an impact. So,
I think you did a really good job. I liked how you brought in the gender role situation. I hadn't really thought about that at all. And also a good job at like taking that break and like breathing. I should probably do that. But...
Yeah, I was telling Leonie and Sandra that today in particular I've been rehearsing and I've been very tongue-tied. Like everything I've said today just felt so difficult. So coming up here I was already nervous, like, oh my god, like I've struggled all day rehearsing this is gonna go so bad. So I apologize for like being extra nervous today. I was very in my head. Honestly, until you said that, I really didn't know you were nervous, like at all. You're very professional up there. Like you have just like a calming voice, like a tone that it comes off as very professional and you know what you're talking about. And it's definitely like we can see that. Thank you.
I like how you tied in the gender differences, but then looked at an actual like causation. You didn't look at gender as the causation. Like here's why things are different. Setting boundaries is very important for a lot of reasons. So I really appreciate that perspective.
I love new information. So pulling in like extra material, new insights, and especially presenting some information from, like you said, the flip side of remote work, and not just the glowing reviews or maybe things that people maybe intuitively think or know about what remote work may be like, but offering a contrarian view, I think is incredibly beneficial to groups of people. Like in any type of environment where you're trying to make decisions, like think about it in HR or in leadership and it's some type of executive board, and you're trying to make this decision strategically to either allow, promote, or look into remote work. That's a really big deal that could make or break any organization, and to not have any voices offer a contrarian view is an incredible disservice, right? It allows for a lot of error, a lot of mistakes to be made. So to have this interjection of like, there may be some downside here in these specific ways, as Chad said. So to have it where, is gender an issue we need to look into? Is that going to be something where we're actually creating more stress or difficulty for our workforce because of the situation that they might be in? If you're, I'm just going to speak in broad generalizations here, but if we're talking about specific professions that are generally female dominated or young female dominated, to offer remote work in that avenue may actually be prohibitive, right, for their balance, or for a lot of their work-life kind of integration. So thinking through like what some of those downstream effects might be, I think is incredibly helpful. So I loved that. As everyone else said, your presentation skills are great. You're a really good presenter. Even catching yourself to breathe is fine. Like that's okay. And to even say like, I gotta catch my breath here. I came in really enthusiastic in the beginning, all guns blazing. I'm gonna have to take a breath. Hold on with me. That's fine. That's okay. Do the things that you need to do, right? In your presentation, you can narrate and announce it. That's fine. To even say like, it's funny, but to say in the beginning of your presentation, like, oh, I'm really nervous. Do you think that actually helps people or hurts people? It helps, right? It actually helps people because you're giving language to the feeling that you have. You're announcing it to everyone, and all of it. Like, oh yeah, that's fine. Everybody's nervous about lots of different things, especially presenting, speaking in front of other people. One of the most nerve-wracking things that people do. So that's okay. You can do that and say like, I need to catch my breath here. If you sometimes people use like water as a prop to let themselves breathe more, to like just take a sip and like, have a moment, because it's a good like, oh, that's a really normal thing to do, right? I'm gonna drink this water. Everyone's just gonna think I'm drinking water. I'm really just trying to breathe. I'm really just trying to catch myself here. So something to think about as a tool. But I don't think you really ran out of breath too much. I didn't feel that anyways. So I thought you did great. I didn't hear too much tongue-tiedness, so I think you did well there. You're very eloquent. I enjoyed it. I think you did a very good job. Thank you, Alexis.
I hope nobody else was ready, but my battery's about to die.
I had to start bringing in a battery pack for my computer, but it's dead, so that didn't do me. It lasted this long. We made it so far.
I didn't bring my power source.
Is it Apple?
No, it's a Dell.
Okay. Maybe
Yeah,
if you need it.
I'll try it. Like to have it cut out right before my grand finale.
And there may even be a plug on the podium. Yeah, they're often.
Yeah, I mean, there's an outlet, but I didn't see a power. Oh, I thought you meant power.
Oh,
source.
yeah. No, that's
Yeah, right, yep.
Okay.
So before I get started, I'm curious, for those of you who were not, or who were out of school before COVID started, how many of you did any significant amount of remote work before the pandemic? A little bit? So, and I mean, maybe people haven't been out of school for long enough to make that valuable. How many of you guys took online classes at all, undergrad? Most of you? Okay. Yeah, it's just occurring to me that I probably have worked the most remote pre-pandemic of anybody in here. So I probably have a different experience of it, but I spent several years working almost entirely remote. And for about the first 5 years that I lived in California, I was commuting between 30 and 50 miles to the jobs that I was in. And one of those in particular was down in Orange County, and so I would take the toll road to get there. So for me, when I started getting the opportunity to work at home even one day a week, one thing we did was it broke up the week really nicely. I would work home Wednesdays. So I'd go in for 2 days, have a day at home, and then close out the week with 2 more days. But for me, it essentially was a raise because I wasn't paying those tolls on that day that I didn't have to commute. And so obviously, the more of those days you can give people, the more you're giving them a perk or a benefit. So I think that's something that doesn't always get considered or brought up in the conversation, but it is definitely one of the benefits of remote work. And it doesn't cost the company anything extra, and yet the worker is getting something. So for these last few presentations, I've told myself I wanted to try things that I hadn't been trying before. So like last time I walked to the back of the room and things like that. Today I'm going to leave my mask on, which I don't think I've done for any of my talks before. I have a cold. I'm vaccinated and tested negative yesterday, so you guys don't have to worry about that. But you also don't want to get the cold that I picked up over Thanksgiving weekend. So I'll try to project even through this. So we talked about remote work. Obviously, a few people have already presented about that. Dr. Fuller covered some, but not all of what I was going to talk about. So I appreciate that. But yes, remote work, or what exactly is it you'd say you do here? Do all day? So some of you might remember several years ago, Yahoo was in a bit of trouble, got a new CEO, and one of her early moves was to tell all of their employees that were used to working at home, which was a significant portion of their workforce. She told them that's no longer an option. Everybody has to come in. We work better that way. We get better results. And it was fairly controversial at the time. So as CNN said, you know, she did some of the cool stuff like free food and iPods or iPhones and things like that. But now she's doing something that's not going to be popular. And how are people going to respond? Well, the company line coming down from Marissa Mero is her name, and from their kind of upper echelon HR folks was we sacrifice speed and quality by working at home, and by being in person, there's that 10 minutes before and after the meetings, like we talked about before. Those kind of chance encounters, the unplanned collaboration that happens. She and some of her management felt were being lost at Yahoo. And they did have a culture where a lot of people were working remote 100% of the time, so that was kind of entrenched already. And so it was a real change, but it was something that she felt needed to be done. Now, we read in our paper from Bloom about the experiment that C-Trip performed, where they took volunteers from their workforce and randomly selected who was going to be able to work at home, who was going to keep on coming into the office, and measured the results of that. And what they found was that they were looking at the questions of how does productivity fare, how is our profitability through this work from home experiment. As Dr. Fuller mentioned at the beginning of class, they saw 15% improvement in employee performance during that time. And what was interesting is that after the study was completed, they asked those people who had participated, do you want to continue working in the mode that you were assigned to for the experiment? If you were working at home, do you still want to do that? Likewise for those in office. And half of the employees who had been involved decided to switch to the other arrangement. After that, and after some time had passed, that improvement in the work from home performance went up to 22%. So people having had the opportunity to try work from home, and people maybe being in the office but seeing the effect of others working from home, they then had better information and were able to choose what's going to be the best way for me. And the people that chose to continue or begin working from home were able to get an even better performance improvement. So some of the benefits, again, that group saw, reductions in the breaks and the time off and the sick days that they needed to take. And there was less attrition, as some of the others have mentioned before, less loss of that labor force. And then just feeling better about the whole situation, about work in general, more positive attitudes, better work-life balance, all those sorts of things. And in our study, they determined, the researchers said that the drawbacks of ending remote work, so that would be a benefit of doing remote work, would be that sometimes employees can kind of wallow in mediocrity. We covered that a little bit when we talked about people can sort of fly under the radar, and as long as you're turning stuff in and you seem like you're busy and doing something, then maybe out of sight, out of mind applies. They're not going to look at you too closely. You're also not going to excel. And other things too, like we talked about before, sometimes it did lead to higher stress for some employees and lower productivity. I can say from personal experience, working at home for a small part of the time, I felt very productive on those days. Once, during the stretches when I've worked at home 100% of the time, it can be difficult to stay engaged. I think, and I would want to look at research to know for sure, but I think that if someone is inclined to be less productive in the office, they probably are also less productive at home and vice versa. And so I think that's maybe more about the work group themselves. But obviously, there are factors about the job and about the setting that can contribute to that. So some of the other drawbacks that you can see, distractions. If you have kids at home, family at home, the noise level, just the fact that you want to interact with those people that you hopefully like and want to see, that takes away from work time. You can have reduced motivation because you're isolated from the others on your team, so people are not kind of driving each other to excel in quite the same way. Just distractions from the media that we have available. Those are all things that can happen. My own personal experience, again, several years ago, I was working at home and I was doing voiceover recordings for some training, and they were doing construction across the street. So all along, there was a rock crusher operating, and I couldn't record voiceover until after they stopped. So I did half of my work after 5 o'clock in the evening, just because there was noise that I couldn't get away from until that time. So one of our other studies, this was the Philibus reading, they looked at what happened during the lockdown. So they found more meetings, but shorter meetings, and overall people were spending less time per day in meetings. I think that's a good outcome, but we've already talked a bit about some of the reasons why we need those meetings to be shorter. And it can be difficult to remain engaged when you're sitting looking at the screen for the better part of the day. Even if the faces on the screen change, it's not the most engaging medium all the time. And then email use was interesting too, because there were a lot of emails that were going back and forth initially upon the lockdown, but that tapered off to close to normal levels after a few weeks. I think within a month, they said. And the one thing that didn't return quite to normal level, pre-lockout levels, was the number of recipients that each email was going to. So people felt the need to inform more of their coworkers or managers or subordinates, depending on what the case may be, because they weren't in as close of contact with them. So after the lockouts, what does it look like when we consider the Yahoo example from before? Again, in 2013, this was sort of controversial. Is this the right way to go? Now, both of these series of points are from CNN stories. Now we realize that there can be inequality between those two groups, the remote workers, the in-office workers, as we talked about. And we need to train managers to be aware of that and to mitigate against that. As some of you have mentioned in your presentations tonight as well, it may be a matter of making that decision for yourself as an employee. Even if I might want to work at home, is that going to be the best career move for me? And the final point from the C-Trip example, how many days is the right number of days to be working at home? They used 1 day per week that people would come into the office because they did have ongoing training and things like that they want people to be face-to-face for. They gave an example of JetBlue. Their employees only have to come in once a month. Currently, for me with Edison, they're talking about the whole re-entry, and I will probably have to go into the office maybe once every month or so, not even on a weekly basis. So different organizations are handling it in different ways. Again, I would go back to the point that every day that you can give people at home could potentially be essentially a benefit for them or a financial raise for them as well. So just something to keep in mind. And I'm sure different organizations are going to find different answers to how is the right number. But I think not too many of them are going to choose 0. Thank you. Yes, Gus.
You always,
Or Cassandra, sorry.
no, you can call me Kathy. You always present really well on the reading, and I love listening to your personal experience, especially because you've had so much experience working from home. And I wanted to ask, just from your perspective, not your perspective, but your experience, have you experienced, I know you've been with Edison for a really long time, have they ever like accommodated because you work from home so long term to provide a stipend for like desk equipment and things like that?
That's hard to answer because of the fact that up until September, I was a contractor with them.
Oh, okay.
So I've only been a full-time employee for a couple of months now.
Okay.
And so, yeah, as a contractor, you're kind of in a different situation. They're very good about providing what you need. Yeah, I haven't really had the opportunity or the need to draw on them for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't.
No, it's
tell you
okay.
more than-
I think that's sometimes a drawback to working remote in terms of like space. So because you had been working it so long, I was just curious.
Right. I will say one thing. So before the gig economy law went into effect here a couple of years ago, I was an independent contractor under a 1099 tax plan. And so when I was an independent contractor, everything about my home office was deductible from taxes. So all the equipment, any printer, toner, anything that office supplies, even had to measure the space of my work area at home and put that on the tax return. So all of that was good for something. So even if I wasn't getting reimbursed, at least it was right after taxes. Anyone else?
Really professional wealth of knowledge. I appreciated the soft intro again to just asking us like what our experiences have been in the past about remote work, and to see that virtually no one except for maybe Lorena had done remote work before COVID, and myself included. I mean, not in any meaningful way. So I thought that was a really good setting of the context of the massive change. Now, almost everybody's hand went up, and like now we've done something virtually, right? Whether we've taken a class online, or we've currently work remotely, or we've done some remote thing. There's a lot more exposure to it, and I love the idea and drawing the attention to data that support the autonomy to see and choose what we think would be best for us. If we are trusted with any type of self-knowledge whatsoever, to understand like, well, I think I would work best in this type of environment, giving the freedom of choice, according to the data, support that notion, right? It supports the idea that people can choose what's best for them and increase their productivity as a result, right? That's what the data say. So I liked that. I thought that was a new, or not a new, but it's something that people haven't talked about yet. So I thought that was really good. Great intro. I love how you went from Marissa Meyer in the beginning to then visiting that at the end. I thought that was really nice to come back to that. That callback was really good as well for what was your second example? C-Trip. Yeah, that was really good as well to come and revisit that, because those were both pre-COVID experiments, or natural experiments with doing it themselves. I thought the comparison was really astute. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. Good job. I'm curious what the perspective is, as we're kind of nearing our last presentation here, for the salary-based assessment, salary-based adjustments for working remote or not, based on your cost of living in the area. So like Google, right? They're cutting salaries for people that are choosing to work remotely if they work in lower, because you can live in a less expensive place, right? to me, that just feel I don't like that. Viscerally, like my knee-jerk reaction is like, no, don't pay people less for their chosen convenience or something. Like, don't say you're worth less to us now because you're doing the same work, but you're living in a cheaper place. Like, that doesn't, the pay doesn't relate to the work anymore. It relates to the lifestyle, which is not what we're paying people for.
You're already saving the company money.
Right.
Working remote, so they're gonna pay you less too.
Right.
Maybe that's why people are quitting their jobs.
Yeah. It felt like a misstep by Google. And they don't make many, but when they do, it's like, oh, that's disappointing. Why'd you do that?
It seems like you could, like, kind of like, you can only shop on sale racks if you make this much salary. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting that they decided to like go back on their word and like cut people's pay. I can maybe understand like if I live in I don't know where's a really cheap place, Kansas, and then I like apply for a job in LA or San Francisco. Like I can maybe understand them being like, well, we're not gonna pay you, but you're gonna be a superstar in Kansas. I've never been to Kansas. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
But like
fair,
so maybe, but like going back on people's like you've worked at the company for 5 years and now all of a sudden you want to move and they're gonna be like, well. You get less money then.
Right.
That's weird, yeah.
Right. It just seems strange.
Yeah, that's no point. I don't like that.
Yeah.
No, because at that point, like, at what point does it become discrimination?
Right.
Because they're like, oh, well, cool, we're gonna offer you this job, but we can't give you that pay offer until we know where you live.
Right.
You know?
Right. What's your zip code?
When they find out where
You live in
like,
Kansas, you don't deserve money.
Right.
Right. Then why will people say like I live in this really expensive place,
Yeah.
right? Like
Changes their address just
right,
to apply.
right.
I mean, they would never know. You'll never know.
It just it seems like a poor choice. All right, so sorry, Michael. I was just really curious about that.
Who lives in Kansas? Sorry.
Nothing against Kansas. Great place.
I got a lot against Kansas.
Okay, I lost. Oh my.
Awesome. I guess not for Kansas then. Hi everybody, I'm Michael Pierce and I'm going to be presenting on Working Distributed, which is kind of an interesting term I heard from a CEO of WordPress. And I'm going to kind of explain it a little bit more. But to start off, we have working remote. And Miani did an amazing job on her presentation of displaying how her company and her were both able to easily and quickly adapt working remotely, that we are capable of doing it. And Gossip did a great job showing all the stats, showing that, hey, we are productive. We're even more productive at home than we anticipated. Businesses are also saving $1,400 about per employee on office supplies, IT costs, and such, which makes it seem like such a win-win. Plus, everybody loves not having to commute to work, being in charge of your work environment. You know, if it's too hot at work, it sucks. You're sweating, you can't do anything about it. If it's too cold, then all you can do is just layer up, and it's terrible. But at home, you got the AC, you have the heater, you do whatever you want to feel comfy. And there's the flexibility of, you know what, I need a break, I'm tired, let me get up, walk out the door, and play with my puppy. Go see your neighbor, go see whoever else is around, and just take a small little break. Having that flexibility and having your family around has just been wonderful. But as we were kind of going through the honeymoon phase of working at home, we've also started to see kind of the downsides that Alexis kind of pointed out, that, you know, maybe it's kind of sucky having your kid running around screaming all the time. Maybe it's not always the best, and maybe you're having trouble kind of setting your work in one place and your home in another, which is where the CEO of WordPress kind of came in to mind, because they were actually going remote before COVID. They were one of the few companies that invested into, you know, allowing remote employees. And they found that only remote wasn't always the best situation, because not everybody wanted to just be remote. And he came up with this thing called Working Distributed, which he came up with because he didn't like the distinctification between those who worked in the office and those who worked remotely. He wanted everybody to feel equal on equal terms. And I think it's a wonderful way to go at work. It allows employees to choose whether they want to work from home or if they want to go in the office, if they want to go in alone or call up their team and say, hey, next Thursday, would you guys want to go up into the office, make a meeting and talk about it? The money they saved on office fees, they actually reinvested into their own employees and said, hey, we understand that everyone has a desk work, everybody has a land. Let us take the money that we save and give it to you as a little allowance in order for you to build that professional work environment so that you can distinctify, hey, this desk and this corner is where I'm going to work. And once I leave that desk, now I'm home and I'm away from work. In order to help mend people and create that connectivity that you kind of miss at the office from seeing them walking by during your breaks and such, they had quarterly get-togethers. And it was, half work, half fun. It was a way to get to know your employees, your coworkers, your bosses, and build a connection so that when you are working, you can say, hey, I remember Miani over at that break. She likes to work like this. This is how I could best communicate with her. And next, they also had all their communication online. So whatever you did on the projects, you would type out, hey, this is what I did. This is why I did it. And it allowed for everybody, no matter what time zone they were in, what working hour they were going through, to be able to backtrack to see what was happening through the project, why it was happening, so that there wasn't just random huge changes in a Google Doc. You don't go from seeing one page to it randomly disappearing and not know why. And they also found that it helped in training employees by giving these exemplary kind of projects to these employees so that they could read through the thinking process and how these other employees went through it. Usually they would join that group and understand and be able to integrate into that group far more seamlessly than if they were just plopped into it randomly. And finally, allowed the company to also hire from across the world. They weren't just subjected to the San Francisco Bay or even just Cali. They were able to employ people from India, Malaysia, wherever. But in the end, it's up to the leaders of each company to choose which work style works best for you, which works best for the company, but also for the employees. And that puts a lot of pressure on each of the leaders to make that decision. And so I wanted to leave off this quick presentation with a tip on how leaders could make that decision a little bit easier, which I believe hasn't been really looked at too much. And that's listening to your employees. Study found that employees that have shown or that were able to show and voice their opinions were far more accepting of whichever outcome came. If it was their voicing for, hey, I want to work remote, but they said, or the company said we have to go hybrid, they were far more accepting than if the company just made a decision and the employees didn't get a say. So thank you.
I love how you reference everybody else's presentation. It was not only a kind gesture, but it really shows how that information that was shared by everyone else is really relevant and how it goes with what you're also offering.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like how you suggest taking a follower-centric approach to leadership. I think that's very important given today's market.
Thank you.
I think you did a great job. Your presentations were always so good in your presence and the way that you hold yourself up there. With that being said, I really don't think you need that many words on your slides because it's all up here. So I would just recommend making your slides a little bit more simple because you know what you're talking about.
Oh, okay.
I would say in addition to that, with the delivery that you have, having maybe something to follow on the screen instead of like the full sentence, just the take home piece of that sentence
Okay.
would be helpful. And maybe even when it is a lot of information, having the animations come in one at a time as you're saying them. Because I was paying attention to you, trying to listen, because what you're saying is everything on the screen. But then I was also felt myself like trying to read through those things and lining up what you're saying with what, trying to keep track of where you're at and stay with you. So that got not terribly difficult, but it was something I had to like effortly do instead of just naturally coming together. So just strategically, kind of to that point, trying to incorporate fewer words, but having that pair with what you're saying with some motion or bringing it in over time. Or more slides. I mean, but it was really clean. I liked that. And the sizing of the font is great. I can read it, which I always appreciate. So that's very good. You have a really calm demeanor, which is nice because it's relaxing and like, okay, I can just settle in and get this information. And I liked that you, as others said, I really loved that you were actively paying attention what others were saying in their presentations. And then you yourself referenced their greatest strength of their presentation in your own. I thought that was really nicely done and not an easy thing to do. So I appreciated that. And everyone loves to hear their own name and to feel like they did a good job. So you have like, now you have like a supportive audience. They're like, yeah, I'm on your side, right? Like, I agree. You did great too. You know, like you're now part of a team and together in that. So I liked that. I thought that was very strategic and well done. You really did a great job of that. I liked this last slide. I thought that was really a great point, a really important point to give the employees voice and to listen to their preferences, and that just the act of voicing and having a voice in some type of decision-making process gives more acceptability to the outcome, whatever it is. So I love that. I think that's a really important point that we could all benefit from. So thank you.
I was amazed that like so few companies actually do it. They just
Mhm.
make the decision and push it out.
Exactly.
And it's very hard to make the right decision when they don't even get that from who's
Right.
the decision maker.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And to know that it doesn't even matter if you make the right decision as much. It doesn't, the impact isn't as strong because people are going to accept it more readily.
Yeah.
Like, okay, even if it's the wrong decision, people, oh, okay, I'll go along. It's not maybe what I wanted, but I'll go along with it because it was the company's decision and they asked for my input and I gave it and they listened. So
Yeah.
I thought that was really good. So thank you for that. Well done.
Thank you.
All right. Is that it for tonight? I don't see any other presentations, right? No surprises? Okay. And that